Well, just when you thought you only got a Beatles Shabbat service, you're also going to get a Beatles Devar Torah. So two for the price of one here at Agudas Achim. So one of my favorite Beatles songs was created out of the increasing moments of conflict between John Lennon and Paul McCartney in the mid-60s. At the time, each was blossoming into their own style as a songwriter. But in that process, they began to write separately more often than they did in their early songs. Despite this drifting apart, they found ways to bring their separate creations together into something beautiful. This song that I'm speaking of is a great example, a kind of Frankenstein's monster of Lennon sections welded to McCartney's own creations. Paul's part begins, "Try to see it my way. Only time will tell if I am right or I am wrong. While you see it your way, there's a risk that we might fall apart before too long. We can work it out. We can work it out." In this section, we can sense in the lyrics the tension caused by each member's desire to do things their way as they craft their songs, while ending with Paul's characteristic positivity, which concludes, "Without a doubt, we can work it out." John's bridge section, however, I think is really where the song takes off. "Life is very short, and there's no time for fussing and fighting, my friends. I have always thought that it's a crime. So I will ask you once again." Should have got the band to do that with me. Maybe for next time. While John's section shares Paul's message that it's not good for a team or a friendship to be at odds, both the music and the philosophical element of John's lyrics take the song into a place of greater perspective on life's conflicts, reminding us, and perhaps even reminding Paul, that life is short. There's no time for pointless conflict. It may even be a crime to waste these precious moments of life by arguing. But nonetheless, the song leads back to Paul's perspective. If you see it Paul's way, he may be right or he may be wrong, but seeing it your way will be more likely to cause us to fall apart before too long. For Paul, these are not exactly two equal sides with equal weight. One is likely the right way. The other is a path to an end to the two parties' loving connection. Now, while we may feel that Paul's perspective is a little heavy-handed and we can work it out, Paul's sections can be seen, perhaps, to mirror the perspective of Moses, the faithful scouts, and God in our Parsha this week, Shlakh. In our reading, the Israelites finally seem poised to enter the land after a year of pitching camp at the foot of Mount Sinai. It was there that they fashioned the portable sanctuary, received commandments from God within it, ordained the priests and the Levites, and took a census of all the people. With all of that completed, the last preparatory task comes in the form of a seeming command from God. Shlakh lecha anashim v'yaturu et Eretz Canaan. Send out men to scout the land of Canaan. Moses tells them to assess the crops and the military situations of the land, and the heads of the tribes go on to their mission. But when they return, their report is not hopeful, to say the least. They doubt the people's ability to conquer the land promised by God, and by extension, doubt God's ability to help them do so. This causes the people to naturally despair and fear yet again that they were led into the wilderness to a dead end, to destruction at the hands of the Canaanites. Two of the scouts, Joshua and Caleb, however, maintain faith that God will enable them to complete this task for which they left Egypt. But they are no match for the naysayers. It's as if Joshua and Caleb are saying to the people, we can work it out if you only listen to our way over the doubts of the other 10 spies, which will certainly lead the people to fall apart before too long. And fall apart they do. Because of this lack of faith in God, God decrees that none of the people 20 years old and up will enter the promised land. Only their children will see it, except for the faithful Joshua and Caleb. For 40 years they will instead wander, always on the cusp of the land that could have been theirs, but never to actually enter it. Wandering is indeed an apt metaphor for what it feels like to be in the weeds of an intractable conflict. Neither party is sure of their position. Their identity and purpose becomes lost in their inability to find common ground or pick a plan of action. We feel this in our own personal disagreements with loved ones and friends, but we also see this play out on a global scale in conflicts between nations. One may be right and one wrong, but without any resolution or progress in dealing with the issue, none of that matters. They are left in the wilderness, less and less sure of why they were arguing as the conflict grinds on. And indeed, the longer it continues, the more that reality of life is very short dawns on us. 40 years can go by in the blink of an eye without a resolution reached, the ultimate punishment. But if this is the conclusion of the story, how could God have commanded this mission in the first place? The rabbis of our tradition are naturally very troubled with the idea that God would essentially set the people up to fail. Instead, they take this statement of God, while it's phrased in the imperative, to actually be more of a suggestion that serves as a test. God says, as it were, if you feel it necessary to send scouts, that's fine. But if you want to rely on your faith in me, that's better. According to this tradition, God is beckoning the people to have trusted God after all the wonders they have seen. God is hoping that they will pick the path that is initially harder but more successful, rather than the path that is easier to stomach at first but will lead to chaos in the end. God wants the people to see it God's way. But God will allow the people the free will to see it their way. A gamble, but one that shows that God is willing to put trust in us, even before we are ready for it. And this troubled, messy, but deep relationship between God and the people points us back to a similar connection within the greatest band of all time, the Beatles. Their competing perspectives on how to create music, while challenging at times for their cohesiveness as a group, ultimately created the brilliance and diversity of the Beatles' music. Even within one song, they can take a single topic of disagreement and present it both from the perspective of the daily experience of working through arguments, as well as the bigger picture of how those conflicts affect the arc of life itself. Depending on the song, one Beatles way may have won a little more than the other, but it never completely overtakes the input of the other band's members. As deep as their conflicts were, they also maintained a deep cohesiveness and trust that allowed them to keep creating amazing music for perhaps longer than even they expected they could. That cohesiveness, unfortunately, was not yet attainable in this instance between God and the children of Israel. God risks being hurt in the interest of building trust with the people. While it doesn't turn out the way God hopes in this instance, that does not mean that all is lost. We need to look to the bigger picture offered by John. One life may be too short to achieve all we need to fix in this world. It may take another generation or a period of wandering and uncertainty to get there. But in the end, we still come back to Paul's belief in a positive outcome. Like Paul, God trusts that we can work it out because God believes in us. Shabbat shalom.